Hey guys, today I'm just doing a little introduction to some content I'm going to start doing where I'm going to be talking about my own card games. I've been thinking and talking about doing this for years. In fact, I think some of the games I'm going to be talking about weren't even ideas yet when I first started saying that I was going to start doing videos on this, but whatever. I've spent a lot of my life coming up with various different games, usually card games, quite often TCGs, because that's what I grew up with and that's what I enjoy. Now that it's starting to seem like TCGs are on the way out of popularity, or that they're all just done, in the end game, whatever you want to call it, I've started looking at different things as well. But to me, it doesn't really matter what type of game it is. It's just, as long as the game idea is there. I'm rambling like mad. I'm rambling really badly. So basically, I'm going to be talking about 4 card games in general on this channel. And in this little video, I'm just going to do a quick little overview of what they're going to be and what kind of content I might do regarding those games. Because I feel like I'm at a point in my life now where I'm trying anything, and one thing I would really like is to actually have a go at getting one of these games made. So I'm going to talk about these games now just very briefly, and then I'll probably do a little introductory video to each of them in a bit more depth, and then I'll start doing videos talking about how to play and how I theorize the game going in the future, and stuff like that. And hopefully we'll get to gameplay videos in the near future as well. The first game I want to talk about is called Immortals, the trading card game. Name might need a bit of work, no idea. But essentially, its original idea came to me in 2017. It's been refined a lot ever since then. It is a very different game to what it was when I first started it. But when I first started it, the thought in my mind was I was a bit similar to Vanguard, and one thing I really don't want to do, although there's definitely going to be similarities in this kind of game, is I really didn't want to rip off Vanguard, or any game in that matter, but I didn't want it to be too similar. So it's been refined in a lot of ways, and it's a very different game now, but it is sort of a typical trading card game. I'm not trying to do anything fancy with it. I'm just trying to emulate that kind of experience you get when you first get into a trading card game and think like everything's new, everything's great, and hopefully, in theory, it would work. It essentially works as how it essentially works is you have one character which is your immortal. There can be more, there just isn't. And you upgrade your immortal and stuff like by playing stronger cards and they take control and stuff. And essentially you've got 5 face down, very powerful sort of spell cards, which are called legendaries, and they represent your life. When you take damage, you flip one up. It probably has an effect when it's flipped, it probably has an effect while it's face up, and it probably has an effect that you can activate by discarding it during your turn. So kind of like a life for a powerful effect kind of thing. Once you run out of them and you get hit, you lose. So you basically take 11 hits to die. That's the basic gist. There's not, like I said, I'm not trying to do anything fancy. And I'm trying to keep the overview little, so let's move on to the next game. The first World War card game. That is probably the longest term game I've ever worked on. I'm starting to get the feeling now that it would work better as a living card game and you should get out more expansions and stuff. But I think this is a very interesting game because, it certainly kept my interest over the years. When many other games have came and gone, I always come back to the First World War game because I do have a genuine interest in it as well. And essentially how it currently works is there's 2 different battle formats that I need to sort of shoot out. Like, I need to work out which one is better. One of them is essentially you just slap the cards down on the field, kind of Magic style. You don't have any zones or anything like that. And the other is that you do have a very limited amount of zones. I think in playtesting, I'm going to playtest 3. Maybe in official games, you'd have 5. And the thing I like about the second style is that you could have like one Western front, Eastern front, Mediterranean front, sea front, even, I guess, an air front, but I don't really know how much like naval combat and air combat is going to be doable in this game. Truth be told, but I like the option to vary it up in that way. However, we have been playing it with just kind of the slap on the table where I haven't really put the effort into redesigning the cards to try it the second way, because although the game doesn't need much changing, it probably does need a bit of changing. But we are just going to try with the original design in that second way and just see if it works better. Because another thing I don't want is for it to just be a mess, because Um, Unlike Magic, where when you're first getting into the game, you will only play like a couple of creatures. You will, by design, kind of end up with a lot of cards on the field. So if you first get into the game and there's just crap everywhere, I feel like that might be massively off-putting. But in saying that, we haven't found it an issue ourselves in playtesting it. So we'll see. The general objective there is to either decrease your opponent's morale to 0, so all the troops, so their country even just goes, right, I give up, or to take so much of their land that you beat them, essentially. Other ways to win, your opponent is too poor for too long, because the game is going to work on resources. I'm a strong believer in resource-based card games nowadays. Like, I feel like if you have something to spend, it limits how mad things can get. And I also feel like it's it's something that's really come into its own in the last couple of years. Like with Hearthstone, obviously Magic's got its own like resource format with mana and all that kind of stuff. I feel like it's a logical way to keep games grounded, at least to some extent, and to it adds a bit of skill to the game as well. So I'm very strong on resource based games. And if you run out of resources and you don't have the resources for too long, you're probably going to lose anyway. But if you can go into like negative resources by buying stuff you can't afford, and if you're poor for too long, you lose a game. That's basically everything. I think World War One card game more or less speaks for itself. Number 3. Let's talk about the survival deck building game thing. The idea of this is it's set in a kind of Fallout-based world. Like, the world has ended. It's now up to you to try and build up your settlement and, live and survive and beat the other guy, essentially. So there are various ways you can win the game, because I am also a strong supporter of varied victory conditions. I did actually have a idea for a game once where you just have different victory conditions. Like, that is the aim of the game. Like, there isn't a set way to win the game. There's just your way, kind of thing. Didn't really get too far with that, won't lie. I've brought that back into other games, but now I'm rambling again. So yeah, there'll be other ways to win the game, but essentially it is a deck building game where you just want to bell the crap out of your opponent. You gain coins during your turn and use them to purchase cards that you have revealed from the world, which is the deck. In theory, you will build your own deck or world before the game, and then you'll both have your individual worlds, and then you'll build your deck from a starting deck of, your typical 5 coins, 5 weights, which are blank cards, and you've got 2 energy on your turn. You can either attack your opponent, or you can search the world, which is turn over the top card of your deck. And then by searching the world, you can then purchase those cards with your coin to build yourself up, make yourself tougher against your opponent, make yourself stronger, hitting your opponent and stuff like that. People who've played the game so far are really enjoying it. It seems like they're really getting into it. It is a deck building game, so if someone hasn't experienced it before, it can be a bit confusing, but they're really getting into it. My girlfriend kicks my ass at it every time, and actually, in saying that, I don't think I've won many games of it. Maybe I won't make that one. It seems like a very simple game to get, and it seems fun enough as well. It's certainly fun to work on, and it's certainly an interesting game concept that I am enjoying. And the 4th and final one, this is the one that's sort of rife with the chop. If I was going to try and bring myself down to 3, which is, it's been hard enough narrowing down 4. These are just the 4 games that have lasted the longest, more or less. And I'm really hoping I don't come up with any more ideas that I really feel like I need to design a new game for. I really hope any new ideas I have from this point I can put into one of the other games. Either this one or Legendaries, probably, because it'll probably be a generic card game idea. Trading card game idea, I mean. The last game, we working titled it as the Fortress game, and it's essentially your typical TCG. You play your dudes and you hit your opponent, and it goes from there. The difference being that at least after a while, we're going to introduce fortresses into it, which sort of override your health, but interact, like, creatures deal damage to them different to how they deal damage to players. So it is still optional whether you want to use one or not. The fortress defense is then the aim of the game, kind of thing. And like I say, it's just a typical TCG. One issue I've had with it is I've based it really heavily in my fantasy world type idea thing, which is called Raz. It does feature in most of my games, but yeah, I focused it very heavily on that, and I do lose interest. I won't lie. It limits how much I can work on it because I've got to stick with that theme. Whereas with legendaries, there's no theme to it, so I can just make whatever I feel like. Um, the Fortress game is sort of a set theme, so it's one thing I'm trying to stick to. Essentially, you have 5 fires. You open one on each of your first 5 turns, and then you use them to pay for the costs of your creatures. Your creatures then attack your opponent, or attack your opponent's creatures, or you attack your opponent, and your opponent blocks them with their creatures to try and get your opponent down to 0 health, or in the later game, destroy their fortress. There's not much more to say about that one. It really is a very generic TCG kind of thing. But I'm hoping it's obviously different enough. I really love all of the games that have made it this far, and I can't deny there might be games that creep their way back in, but at this stage, it's very unlikely that I won't just strip off most of the bits and put them into other games. So they are the 4 games I'm going to be working on the channel. If you've enjoyed this video, please let me know what game you're looking forward to. What would you like to hear from me first? And thank you for watching very much. If you're interested in hearing more about these games, please do subscribe, because like I say, I will be doing more videos on these in the near future. But hell, it's nearly 12 minutes long. Sorry about that. All right, can't believe you watched it this long. Goodbye.